Hey there, hey, it's Michelle, your big sis with Brilliant Quest, and today is a story time. And I have been fighting against making this video because this is one of those times where I got to be vulnerable and paint myself in an unflattering light. And that is, I want to talk to you about the 7 long years of going through mental hell and mental struggle and losing my mental ability and identity. And so today, I want to talk to you about how to protect your mental identity. You know, it's funny sometimes we do more to protect the integrity of our technology than we do of ourselves. And when I was going through this, and let me start at the start. Okay, so bear with me. Now I'm just gonna say some words that people don't normally like or are secretive, if you will. And if you are some of my loving bows, you know, my bros that rock with me, stick with me because this is gonna help you too. But the 7 years that I'm talking about are menopause, you know, going through that transition, what they call the change. And prior to that, I was able to do so much so fast, and I prided myself on my mental capabilities. And when you know, that's the very area, besides the high flashes from Dante's lowest rungs of Inferno, but it was my mind. And I went through hell. I went through mental pain, mental anguish, and torment. I can tell you that hell is a place on earth in your mind. You can be in hell when the person standing right next to you is in heaven. So I've learned a lot. And I'm not going to, just continue to go on and tell you, oh, it was bad, but it was bad. And one of the things that I found was that when I went to the good old internet, even at this particular time, when you type in mental anything, they immediately call it mental illness, where it's different because this is I found that these are temporary. I'm not talking about the mentally insane or the mentally ill because there are illnesses. I am talking about the mental struggles where you're having temporary situations. Now, for my physicians and doctors out there, y'all might be like, well, that is mental illness. Maybe it is, but it's not chronic. I'll say that it's not chronic. But even with that information, most of it was not addressing what I need, and it was allopathic. Allopathic meaning that they wanted to put you on drugs. They want you to put you on meds. And I was like, no, I know that this is temporary, and I want to become better able at coping. So let this be a love letter to you. If you made it to this point, let this be a love letter to you from Big Sis Michelle of giving you some insights on how to cope with your mental struggles, your mental pain, if they are not chronic, if you just know you're going through a mode. And I remember this song when I was a kid that was sung by Monica, and she called it "Just One of Them Days." And at first I thought, oh, that's the period song when you PMS, that's a PMS song. And now in hindsight, I'm like, that's the mental struggle song. It's just one of them days. And she says it's one of those days that we go through when you're angry inside. It's just one of those days. And I started noticing that I started having more of those days. And yes, I know that, me going through the change and everything, my hormones were freaking out and trying to figure out their new status because my body was giving them new directives and all of that. But through working through this, I started learning something that I would have never been able to understand. And that is, going back to when I was talking about how we protect our tech way more than we protect ourselves. And that was my mental identity. Yeah. I started to lose myself. Yes, I had the normal symptoms that, some people have, moodiness, sudden feelings of impending doom and all of that. But going through that for such an extended period of time of 7 long years, I lost who I was. And when I realized that it's one thing to have mental struggles, it's another to start messing with your very sense of self, I had to go through the mental gauntlet. It's kind of like American Gladiator on steroids for the mind. I had to deal with illusion, with mental trickery. I had to deal with, of course, your mood swings and the emotional imbalances that would happen. But as a writer, and I write fiction, I had to reteach myself how to write because I was second guessing myself. I would write a sentence, and I don't know if you can get dyslexia by going through this, but I felt like it because I would write something and then I'd come back and read it maybe a day later, and I didn't understand what I was trying to say. So I lost my identity of being able to write. I retreated. I mean, like right now, I'm finally able, and I'm sorry, y'all, I got one little hair, I can't seem to get it, but anyway. I've had people, that see me online now, and they're like, where you been? I keep getting that, where you been? I was like, I was trying to survive. I was trying to live and all of that. And I can laugh at it, now, but it was hell. And I was like, you know what, if I'm going through this, many other people are going through this. And so I want to give you some of the things. I'm just, talking with you. I just want to give you some of the things that I learned. So please forgive me if it's not out of order, because this is, all of it comes from my heart, but this one is just me. This is me just really trying to do my best to serve what I have that somebody watching this will find useful. Okay. So in mental identity, for me, my mental identity dissolved. And when it dissolved, I fell into this apathy and I languished, listless, aimless, You know, that's a dangerous place to be, because an idle mind is truly the devil's workshop. And not that you're going to do evil things. Well, evil simply means opposite of live. Anyway, not that you're going to do bad things to other people, but you can definitely do bad things to yourself. Now, fortunately, I didn't fall into the normal vices that you would expect. What I fell into was a internal prison of being lost in my own mind. And, you know, you could maybe say, I'm not trying to diagnose myself, but you could say, oh, she had some mental breaks. Maybe I did, maybe I didn't. But I wasn't able to be myself. I wasn't able to talk or train. Like doing something like this, I would lose my words. I would lose my train of thought. I just was not myself. And I'm going to cut to the chase on some self-identity things. And that is, when and if you ever get to this point where you're mentally struggling, the first thing I want you to do is I want you to take the nestea plunge. That's when you just fall back and release that identity. It took me too many years to realize that you can't hold on to a ghost. I was no longer that Michelle. That's the reason why they call menopause the change. It wasn't until I started embracing that I'm going to build back new, better, that I even started making some progress. And so this is my advice based on my experience. When you're mentally struggling and you're having problems identifying with who you normally are, and it's recurring where it's just not working, you can't bounce back, you've lost your mojo, you are no longer able to do the things that you used to do, quickly as possible, embrace that you are moving into a new evolution of who you are, because your identity is so important. It will mess up your whole life. Financially, I lost a lot, almost lost everything, because I couldn't see my way out of a paper bag because my identity was eroded. Your identity will demand that you take action out of who you see yourself as. So if you don't see yourself as anything, you can't take action. And so being able to do, if you can't do anything else, just say, okay, I'm starting over. I'll build back. Will help you to start taking a forward movement. One of the biggest insights that I got going through this, going through what it meant to go through the change and to struggle mentally, was to understand that this came to pass, not to stay. I willed myself through it because I finally started realizing that I needed to embrace starting over and being new. And I had to assure myself that this was not the permanence of the remainder of my life. And for you who may be thinking this, it gets better. Understand this came to pass, not to stay. And one thing about when we go through something really, really life-changing, like the change or mental struggles that are not necessarily classified as illnesses, when you go through that and you make it through, it leaves a gift at the door. Get the gift. My gift. One of my gifts was understanding that as the new me, I didn't have to be perfect. I didn't have to let my unworthiness run amok. Because baby, when you get to the dark end of what you've been fearing about not being worthy and you've lived through it, it's okay. I don't care. You can see me as raggedy as you need to. Maybe I'm helping you. You know, I mean, the fact that, like I said before, if you've watched any of my videos, one of the big reasons I had wanted to get on YouTube many years, my hair. Yes, you call it vanity or whatever, but I was like, my hair, she is just, anyway. And I don't like to comb it and stuff. And I was like, but they're going to have to deal with who I am. That's why I'm sitting up here struggling right now. This little piece, y'all, this little piece. But anyway, I was just like, they just going to have to deal with it. And not one person has said, your hair is a distraction. And if you say that, don't. But anyway, I got to the end of a lot of stuff that was just stupid. It was superfluous at best. It was just surface level at best. It did not matter. And it only came when I started saying, I'm not that Michelle. I gave myself time to mourn her, but I'm not that Michelle. I mean, have you ever had it where you're able to look at things that you did before a time and then look at what you're able to do after, and you're in awe of what you used to do? Like right now, I'm going through and I'm doing some AI auto-generated narration for a lot of books that I wrote prior to this. And I read them, and y'all, seriously, I cannot. I read them just like somebody else. I don't know what's going to happen. And then I read them like, oh, you did that. And I find myself in awe of that Michelle that used to write those books. Now, my books that I'm writing now, I enjoy them. They're different, and I'm liking them, you know, because every now and again, that old Michelle, she'll be like, okay, girl, use this, you know, she'll give me some of her skills. And I know that eventually we're going to make friends and we're going to be able to work together well. But in your identity and why you need to protect it, you need to protect it because it will be the end of you if you don't. There are so many people out here that are not realizing that they're having a crisis of mental identity, not personal. And let me say that as well. Personal identity is usually how you see yourself through the lens of others. Mental identity is how you see yourself through what you are, what you can do, what you can feel, what you can generate from the inside. It's no one else can see that part. Mental identity is very private and very personal. That's why I talk about how you can get software to protect your computer and what it is internally. But we don't have that as of yet for our minds. And so because of that, we have to take the initiative to do it ourselves. Now, you might say, okay, Michelle, that's all well and good. How did you get to this point where you're able to string 2 sentences along coherently? Well, time. and I laugh at it, but yeah, sometimes you have to give yourself the gift of time and to be merciful and grant yourself grace. But also, there are things that I did. And one of the biggest ones is I journaled. Now, like I said, in my past, I was a go-getter. So I would work and I would be a therapist for churches and parachurch organizations and all that kind of stuff. And so I could do a lot of stuff. And I tended to like what we call brief therapies. So like I tended to migrate to your CBTs, to your in full immersion therapies, to hypnotherapy, all the ones that got people to the quickest, because that's what I like. I like quick stuff. I didn't like you having to, talk for 20 years. Because I mean, first of all, I don't want to see that often. But my big takeaway in some of those brief therapies was that I journaled. And because I was already there with how my mind was trying to figure out who I was with altered states, I really got back into self-hypnosis. And self-hypnosis is not anything, super big. It's really kind of like just putting yourself in a relaxed state where you can go to either a real or imagined place in your mind, or pretend, if you can't see visions, of some place that you can be calm, where it's kind of like a workstation away from things, where you can be totally honest with yourself. There would be times in my self-hypnosis that I would just go in there and scream, mental screaming, because that's all I could do out of where I felt like abandoned. And I know this might sound heavy, but this is just my truth. And I said I was going to share. And so, it's hard, but here we go. With personal mental identity, when it starts slipping or changing, it feels like a betrayal and it feels like mistrust. I got to the point, and this is embarrassing to say, I don't want to cry, and I'm not going to, thankfully, because I cried enough. I could not trust my own mind. There will be days I get up and like, hopefully we'll be able to think straight. And hopefully we won't descend into tears just trying to make a grocery list, And getting back to breathing myself down for 20 counts, visualizing that place. And that place is a wonderful place. It's a place at my grandmother's house that I loved as a kid. And when I realized that was my place and I went there, I could hold meetings. And okay, now I will say this, and this is just coming to me. Thank you, mind. We friends again. But I remembered that in my 2-prong approach, I would get into my meditative times, and I made myself this quote unquote rule that I needed to do this at least 2 times out of a 7-day span. I would go into my mental palace, if you will, and I would have these meetings with myself and with my masters. And when I say masters, people I admired, some of them historic, some of them that I know and I admire. And I would bring them in. Now, little did I know that my mind had not totally abandoned me, because I had read about this many years ago in Napoleon Hill's Think and Grow Rich. And my mind knew to go and grab that resource to help me, even though I couldn't attribute it at the time to Napoleon Hill's Think and Grow Rich, where he talked about the mastermind and doing this. But I used it and it helped me. And it is amazing how the little snatches, even while my mind was trying to fight through all of the fluctuations and the weird cocktails and combinations of my hormones running amok, that it would snatch little things from wherever, the ether, the heavens, ascended masters actually talking to me or whatever, and give me guidance on just how to make it through the next minute. Because it had gotten to that point where I was like, I gotta make it through the next minute, let alone day. And so I used that. The other thing I did, and this is the reason why I talked about using what I had learned to help other people during those times as a therapist, and that was journaling. Don't turn me off, because I'm starting to preach good right here. Journaling is one of the fastest ways that you will be able to work through many deep-seated things. There's this word, it's called cathartic. And cathartic means that you have this big release. Now, I'm about to get a little crass here, because this is the best metaphor that I have found when trying to get people to understand the fullness of what real journaling will do. And real journaling is like when you've been constipated and you finally have this huge release where you feel completely empty and cleaned out. That's what journaling will do. There's this book, and I'm going to put the book up here because I can't remember the name right now, because like I said, I just really wanted to talk with you. But this book, I got it during the beginning part of this journey that I found myself on. And I felt alone, y'all. I would try to talk to other people to figure out if they knew what was happening to me, and nobody seemed to know what was happening. But thankfully, I found this book, and it's a book about journaling. And I so understood this woman. She had gone through some things, and she had anger, and she didn't know that she had anger. And that's another thing. Deep-seated anger a lot of times can be hidden from even us. We don't even know we're angry. And if it goes unchecked for too long, it can turn into depression. So I read that book, and she said in there that she just got notebooks and she just started writing. She didn't care, they were line notebooks. She didn't care where the lines were. She said sometimes she would just scribble and write and exclamation points and cuss and fuss and everything else. And it helped her to get out all of these things with a cathartic release. Now, it is something I've talked about this in another video about Solomon's paradox, where Solomon, King Solomon, the wise great king, was so wise, but he could not follow his own advice. That was me, because I had given people over the years assignments of journaling. I had taught them ways to get started so that they could get it done. I took them through the process. Like, if you find that you're embarrassed, that you don't want to talk about it for fear of it being seen, burn it in a safe environment as soon as you get through. You don't have to keep it. All of those different little things. And yet still, here I was in a, I used to call it. I was like, I'm stuck in Play-Doh. And not Plato the philosopher, Play-Doh the toy, the dough, because that's how I felt. I just felt like I'm so malleable. I don't even know who I am. And I would break out into tears. I'd get angry. The swings of the mood were violent. And so I read this book and I sat down to write. And no joke, it was just me crying and writing. And you know how paper, when it gets wet, it can be bumpy and crumbly. I kept writing. I write with felt tip pens. Y'all, this is one of my favorite ones. They're not paying me for this, but a blue precision 5 fine point. Oh, that's my jam right there. And it's felt. So it means that when it gets wet, it's going to run. And I wrote, and it smeared, and I wrote, and I wrote, and I wrote. And I remembered going to sleep that night. And instead of me sleeping deeply, I slept in dream after dream where I felt like I was working through stuff. And I woke up the next day tired, but knew I had caught on to something. And I'm not going to continue on and on about that. But what I will tell you is, what I now do is I make sure that I always have my journaling books. And I made the mistake when I first started of buying those pretty, those fancy little journal books. Well, I can't say that for others, but I didn't want to write in them because they were so pretty and I wanted to keep them. So I have a whole shelf of beautiful journals. I mean, I'm talking about leather bound. I'm talking about with the little ribbons, all that stuff. You know what I do have? I have stacks and stacks and stacks of composition notebooks that you can get from the store for $1. They're 100 page, books. And when I start a new one, I date it. And when I end it, I date it. So I know what time span. And I've even told my family in my will, if I'm out of here, you burn them. Don't you read them? Don't you let nobody else see them? Because that's my cathartic work. That's how I found my way back to be able to build a new identity, and how I'm able to fortify not the identity that I started building, but the identity that I am each new day. Finding and protecting your identity when you've been mentally suffering means that you finally start to learn. Identity is not static. Identity is always moving and evolving and all of that. And so now I let myself be the new person I be. I get myself off of the hook of doing what I think I should because of what I did. And that was the next thing about protecting my identity. I learned to have a should, a could, and a would list. My should list is the stuff that it works. I know it should be done. And I'm going to tell you, it's the list I hate the most. It's that list that puts things like, now you need to winterize the house, or you need to take the car in. It's the shoulds that are going to help you progress on the stuff that you said you want to do. Like, I want to start gardening. I know it's time for me to start looking and buying seeds. I don't know what I'm doing, but I know it's time, But by journaling, that's when I started learning how to keep myself in a good place so that my mental identity can be free to do what she needs to do. Yeah, mine's a she. And move and evolve and grow and not be forced to continue to be the same every day. And the next thing about this journaling, and even in my self-hypnosis meditations where I would have my round table of elders, I also started learning that it is a very good thing when you finally realize that you must die to self daily. I went back and I read what Martin Luther King said about dying to self daily. I even read, scriptures about it. I read other sayings because I'm not a religious person. I'm a spiritual person. And if it comes, the wisdom comes, it comes from where it comes. And I remember reading something, some of the Buddhist teachings that talked about what suffering will bring. And I was like, oh my gosh, this mental suffering is so that I can expand and get new awarenesses. Oh, and it started offering me a lot of breakthroughs. And so dying to self daily was that wonderful gift that came out of those times of desperation of me just writing. Why? Now I'm gonna tell you, when you journal, if you're not having these mental whatevers, please don't do too many whys. Because why is just an exercise in futility, if you ask me. You can do what's and all of that, but the whys are different. And it just came to me to tell y'all this. Okay, and I'll tell you this. Why is mystery? What is puzzle? And what I mean by that, and this is just one of my my author things. Learning to write mystery and intrigue and all of and curiosity to make my stories better. This is a side quest, so bear with me, and I'm almost finished, I promise. Mysteries. Most people think mysteries are what puzzles really are. You see, mysteries are things that'll never be fully understood or explained. Like a mystery is, what's the meaning of life? It's never going to be really solved. A mystery is what happens after death. Even when you have people that say they came back to life, they didn't die. They had a near death experience. So they don't know what it's like to be dead. The dead can't come back and tell us. That's a mystery. But a puzzle is, who shot JR? Oh, that's old. That's when I was a little kid. Another mystery is, another puzzle might be, why is the sky blue? They figured that out, And so in my journaling, I had to learn trying to explore mysteries is futile. Instead, explore puzzles and finding the solutions. And so I stopped railing against the powers, of whatever. And I stopped with all this, why me, this pitiful victim stuff, because my brain was doing kablooies and all this. And I started understanding what, and you know what the most powerful one was? You guessed it. What or who do I need to be to get back to a point where I can trust myself and I don't feel betrayed? Because I had a lot of anger over, out of all the things that could have happened, it was my mind that was attacked during the change. And y'all, 7 years might not sound long after you've done it, but 7 years is a long time. And it was 7 years of immense struggle and pain and all of that. But it left a gift at the door. And what it did was it left me with an intense ability. And y'all, my sunlight is, ooh, if I do this, see what I'm saying? See what I'm saying? Okay, it's okay. Y'all can still see me. Okay. But it left me with this gift of being kind to myself. It left me with more tools so that I don't fear losing my identity as much as I did when I was going through it. And as you can see, I'm able to talk and make sense and not cry, not get overheated, and not just be able to do it and throw my hands up in frustration so that I can help you. So it is time for me to land this plane. Let me go in and recap what I said so that you will be able to find some nuggets of truth out of it if it helps you. Okay, my recap. I went through hell for the last 7 years. It was because of menopause. If you're a guy, this still applies. If you are feeling mentally drained, if you are feeling like you're in a mental hellscape where you just can't see your way out to help yourself, if you're feeling like you can't trust your mind, like you're being betrayed, like why am I not the person I used to be? Why can't I behave like I used to be? You might be going through mental struggle, mental torment, mental pain. Two of the things that I used to help me once I stopped the downward spiral enough to even connect with who I was I did deep meditation or self-hypnosis. The way I did my self-hypnosis was I would sit quietly, I'd make sure my breathing was rhythmic, and then I would count myself down from 1 to 20. And then I would make sure that I went to a mental place of calm. Mine was a nostalgic place at my grandmother's house. I would call my council of masters to help me. It's something that Napoleon Hill talks about when he talks about the mastermind. And then I would sit in that and I made sure that I did it at least twice a week. I normally did these things either before I went to bed or right when I would get up. I then also journaled. Journaling, I did it. And for me, I do journaling before I go to bed. In the mornings, I'm trying to do other stuff. I try to do it in the mornings. I'm not consistent with it, but I got a lot of efficacy out of doing it right before I go to bed. Okay. So I journaled and I did cathartic release. I learned that as a person who was going through the mental struggles, that I needed to stop writing and asking why, and instead asking or doing what and who, when, where, and hows, because why gets into mystery, and mystery is all about things that are never going to be solved. Puzzles are problems that have a solution. And so the why is mystery and all the others are puzzle. And then I learned to give myself grace and time. And one of the biggest takeaways was that my self-identity is an ever-moving construct, and that I must die to self daily and wake up with a new me and be totally fine with that. All right. So thank you guys for listening to this one, about how basically I was struggling mentally for a long time. So my time is up. I thank you for yours. This has been Michelle, your big sis with Brilliant Quest. Now go out there and help yourself. Don't lose your identity. Protect it at all costs. Bye.